I want to tell you two stories that I think I told you once before, and you'll see why I'm retelling them maybe towards the end of this year. Many years ago, I was invited by an organization based here in sunny Muncie called Gateways, whom I work for, to go to Florida to do a Shabbaton in Florida. I didn't know, because I was a Greener, I had just arrived in the country. I didn't really know Epis, Vostutzach in America, and that Florida is a meyuchadika Medina, meyuchadika state. When I arrived there, it was to speak for a rabbi I'd never met before, and I'd spoken to the fellow on the telephone. He was a Chabad rabbi. He told me his kehillah was they were traditional, Vimazogan, traditional, not particularly frum, traditional. Also, he said they were quite elderly. I did not know, because I was new, that Florida has a rather unfortunate nickname. Does anybody know the nickname of Florida?
God's waiting room?
Yes, God's waiting room. They call it God's waiting room. And so many people from the Vimazogan, the tri-state area, go down to Florida for the final chapters of the reading of the book. Saf Golsof, I arrived and I had to speak Friday night. And actually, speaking here reminds me a little bit of the hall. The hall was mamish about the same size as this. And here you've got 4 columns in the middle. They had 6 columns, and there was 3 going on either side. So the column there, 3 pillars. That makes it extraordinarily difficult to give a drosha when you can't see people, when you're sort of like diving. You've got to have eye contact when you're speaking. Not only that, you'll probably know, I see there are some younger attendees this evening. When you're a young man, generally, I think when you're young, you're generally, b'derech klal, a little bit shy. Is that true? I think back to my own childhood, I was an extremely shy boy. I still am very shy. It took me ages to overcome this. Older people, b'derech klal, have overcome the diffidence, embarrassment, and shyness of youth. They have no difficulty in letting you know if you're not pleasing them. And so I arrived there. When he told me that his kehillah was elderly, which was the loshon he used, it was a bit of a guzma. There was not really, they were very, very elderly, and they had certainly overcome the shyness of youth of letting you know when you're saying something that hasn't exactly pleased them. So I'd never spoken there before, and you can probably guess that when a speaker goes to a town for the very first time, he chooses one of his best droshes, something that always works, something that's always matzliach, that can't go wrong, unless you go to Florida. So anyway, so I started the drosha, and I could see after 5 minutes, these old folk were not happy. They were bored. And is the American phrase antsy? Is that the phrase? People are jumping all over the place and they're schmoozing with each other. And I'd started the drosha. I couldn't stop. And they were, the more I spoke, the more disconnected they became. Somehow I finished the drosha. I realized it had been a complete disaster. And the next morning I was walking to shul. And one of the old fellows from the night before was on the other side of the road. So I crossed over and I said to him, "Good Shabbos." He said to me, "Good Shabbos." And I said, "How are you?" He says, "I'm fine." "How are you?" "Baruch Hashem." He said, "Are you with that Gateways organization?" I admitted that I was with the Gateways organization. He said to me, "That guy that spoke here last night." Now you'll realize that he didn't recognize that I was the guy who had spoken there last night. I mean, he'd seen me for 45 minutes, but just, that guy that spoke here last night, I don't know what he wanted from us, he told me. I thought to myself, what's he talking about? I went home and I discussed it with my wife, and I don't know what he wanted from us. I think he's used to speaking to young people, or intellectuals. But for most of us here, we're extinct. I thought, what on earth can I possibly say? Because I was going with him to the shul. There were 60 people for the drosha the night before. Now we're getting into the shul, there's going to be 200 people. And they're going to say, what was that rabbi like that spoke last night? And they're going to say, it was dreadful. And I was mamish dying. It's just like posh to stand up in front of a chebra, I have to tell you that. And I was mamish, I was feeling a bit koirachdik. I mean, whereas he didn't want to be swallowed up, I would have been quite happy at that stage. I was, self goes up, it was Taka Pasha Shmois. And Pasha Shmois versteht sich, Moshe Rabbeinu says Hashem Yisbarach, ken ich reden. That's somebody else. I can't speak. Lo ish devorim anochi. I don't know how to speak. And what did Hashem say to him? Be some pella odom. Who decides who can speak and who can't speak? And what that gave me the chizuk to carry on. And Baruch Hashem. And that was very much sliach. I know that because one of the people from the night before came up and said, why didn't you speak as good as that last night? So Amal, and Nataka, a friend of mine, another rabbi I was very close to, good friend, he was in Florida once and he told me he was in a hotel. He was in a hotel and there were people there at a table, well, again, a bunch of old folk. And he overheard the conversation. So they were sitting there, one of the guys said, I think I'm going to go and live in Israel. I said, what? I think I'm going to move to Israel. One of his friends said, that's a great idea. Yep. I think I'm going to move to Israel. Great. So go. Yep, I'm definitely going to go. Another guy said to him, so what are you waiting for? I'm waiting till it's too late. I'm waiting till it's too late. Interessant. I'm waiting till it's too late. A person goes through life and they wait till it's too late. And there's another story I told you once. I don't know if you remember this. When I was a younger man, I was just married, my first year of marriage, and we went to, at Sukkot's time, we went to Eretz Yisrael. And we came to Eretz Yisrael, and it was Simchas Beis She'eva time. And look, ich bin a Kalta Litvak, but I was told that it would be very interesting to go down to Toldos Aaron in Meir Shorim and see the Chassidish Chaber, the Varm and Lebedik Siva Stutzach. I went down to Toldos Aaron, and the Chaber had put all the tables at the back of the shul. And so I stood in the tables watching what was going on. I can't remember exactly. In my mind, I'm picturing 1,000 Yidden. Maybe somebody knows Toldos Aaron better than me, but I remember 1,000 Yidden. But accurate or not, can't remember. Not sure. Self goes self. There was 1,000 Chassidim, and there was the Toldos Aaron Rebbe sitting there. I remember he's wearing a white kapota, a white bekisha. He's sitting there, and he's just shuckling gently, and you could feel epis. They were waiting for something. Waiting for something. Wonder what they were waiting for. You could feel it in the air. And Taka, after a few minutes, in came Dayan Wise, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, who was the Av Beis Din of the Eidich Reis Beis Din. Before then, he was the Av Beis Din in Manchester, where I used to live. And he came in with some of his chevra, and I noticed there was a chair opposite the Toldos Aaron Rebbe. And they sat down, looking at each other. Oh, that's what they were waiting for. The Be'emes, not true, was still an atmosphere. You could feel they were still waiting for something else. And after a few minutes, some of the Chassidim started a nigan, and the other Chassidim started, oh, well, that's what they're waiting for. Like 1,000 Chassidim, but the nigan sounds very nice. Still waiting for something. What were they waiting for? They're waiting for these two old now, though. I think Toldos Aaron Rebbe in those days was his late 70s, and certainly Dayan Wise was. So they got up and they started to dance together. That's what they were waiting for. So these two old Chassidish Gedolim got up, and they linked their hands like this, fingers through fingers, and they started to dance. Have you ever seen a steam train leaving a station? Krichsach, right? What happens is that it goes, and the wheel goes, and then another little puff of the smoke, and then, but what happens after a few seconds? Off it goes. It was Peladik. These two old Chassidish Yidden, a few seconds, and then they were flying. They were dancing in a zar, unbelievable. Islavas, and it was incredible to see. Some people get old and stay old. Time gets to them. And some people, time simply washes off them. They may be old bachutz, or b'bifnim, in their passion, in their enthusiasm, in their hearts, younger lights. Some affected by time and some are not. And I discovered I had the Nashia, and I found a Medrash Rabbah this year which absolutely astonished me. We just read recently the Seder of Noach. And there it says a very interesting thing about Noach which I hadn't chapped before. So this is in Zion, and it's supposed to be Posuk Vov. And it says, V'noach ben sheish me'as shona ba'mabel hoyamayim al orish. So Noach was 600 years of age, which zicha would mean that he's right to move to Florida. And he was 600 years of age, and the Mabel started. Fine. Was tutzach after that? If you look in Perik Tes, and Posuk Kovches, it's Vayichi Noach Achar Mabel Shlosha Me'as Shana. And what happened was, the Chamishim Shana, that Noach lived after the Mabel 350 years. And then it says, Vayikogimi Noach, and just in case you're not very good at arithmetic, the whole life of Noach was Tesha Me'as Shana, V'chamishim Shana. Was 950 years of age, and he died. I mean, Zeh Poshut, no? So again, he was 600 years of age when it started to rain. And then it says, when he gets out from the Teva, by Noach Achar Mabel, he lived for 350 years. So if you put it all together, the entirety of his life was 950 years. Anything wrong with that, Cheshbon? He was a year in the Teva. He went into the Teva. He was a whole year there, so it shouldn't be that he was 950, it should be 951. What happened to the year it was in the Teva? And the Medrash Rabbah says an astonishing thing. But that year, he walked into the Teva, time stopped. Time didn't affect him. Time didn't exist. There's time in a place where time affects us, and there's a place where time doesn't affect us. Incredible thing. And Taki, you all know what the Ramban says. It's not time, it's also place. So if you remember the size of the Teva. So it's 300 amas long. Okay? And then the width of it was 50 amas. And the height of it was 30 amas. So that makes it, as an amma is about 1.5 feet. And if it was 30 amas high, that makes it 45 feet high. Okay? So I'm 6'1". Right? So therefore, it was, if we'll now use, instead of amas, we'll use YYs. Okay? So I'm 6 foot. So if we're talking, therefore, that the height of the thing is 45, no, it's 7 YYs, basically. Right? That's how high it was. But remember, it was divided into 3 decks, wasn't it? The top was for the humans. The middle was for the animals. And the bottom was for all the deposits and all the stuff that was collected over the time that were in the ark. So we got to take the size of this, which is 300 amas, 450 feet long. Not very long. How long is an American football field? 300 meters, feet, what? Is that all? What a crazy game. Anyway. Not with 3. How many yards? It's only 100 yards. Okay. Wow. Right, so it's just a little bit longer than an American football field. Not very long. It's not very tall, especially as, what do we make that? We made that, what, 6 YYs? 6 YYs divided by 3, so it's 2.5 YYs, right? That was it. And now at this point, you're going to start throwing things at me. Now, I'm now Reform Rabbi YY, Apikoros Lemahadrin. You got all the animals in the world in there? Don't be stupid. Don't be ridiculous, says the Ramban. The Ramban says, sure. It's megalopher azamin zachli, all the animals in the world in there. You don't get one species of bird in there. So how does such a thing happen? So the Ramban says, because when they went into the nace that was the teva, then the rules of the world only apply when you're in the world, when you're in teva. But a nace, by definition, is a yotzim in a teva. You're leaving teva behind. And if you're leaving teva behind, the rules of physics don't apply. We know that, of course, there's so many examples of this. In the Mishkan, and the Holy of Holies, the Mazogan in English, was the Aron. And how wide was the Mishkan, do you remember? So it's 20 by 20. It's 20 by 20. And then the Aron was 1.5 amas. So that's about what? What about that? Okay? So there's the Aron there. And then it's 20 amas. So let's make it poshut. Let's say here's the Aron, and there's the wall there, and there's the wall there, which is not too different to where it would be. So if you measure from here, to make it easy, it's 20 amas, let's pretend that the Oren was 2 amas, just to make it very easy, okay? So if I measure from this side to the wall, and this side to the wall, what's the measurement? 9. And what was it? 10. That's impossible. But it didn't take up any space. When Noach went into the ark, there was no time. Time didn't affect him. When you were in, and of course we all know when we were at Shlosh Regalim, we all went up to the base of Mikdash, and every Yid standing there like a sardine, and then it came time to bow down, which of course, you need space for that. No. Suddenly, it expanded. The rules simply don't apply. There's a time when rules don't apply. So it doesn't apply to place, to mokum, nor necessarily do the rules apply to Zman. You can be a yotzi min Zman, but Zman does not affect you. You just have to know exactly how to do that. How do you do that? And how does Zman work? It's interesting. There is a wonderful Rabbi Dessler, which I suppose we're all familiar with. Rabbi Dessler quotes, you find this twice in Michtav Eliyahu. So he quotes, I'll read this a little bit to you. He says, how does Zman work? So he quotes Reb Hirsch Broide from Kelm. Reb Hirsch Broide, the Rosh Yeshiva in Kelm, said, Loi, ki loi hazman over ala odom, ela ha'odom noise b'seich hazman. Noch einmal. Ki loi hazman over al ha'odom, ela ha'odom nosea b'seich hazman. It's not that time passes over a man, but man passes through the times. This is interesting. I don't know if when you were in school, if you ever had to study Goshe history. If you look at the Goshe history book, very often they portray time as a line. Do they not? In fact, it's called a timeline. You've got one long line like this, and then they usually put little intersections with the date. So, Lamoshel, you've got 1096. That's a date, a Goshe date that we should all be aware of. That's when Rashi lived, and it was also the date of the First Crusade when Nebuch, lots of Yidden were slaughtered. So 1096, bit one, fine, okay. And then move forward in time whenever you like. 1776. What happened then? Oh, that's when you made the enormous mistake of leaving Her Majesty the Queen and going and becoming rebels and colonists and breaking away from the motherland. Big mistake. I mean, was a big mistake, no? Yes, of course. Who would you prefer as your head of state? Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II or Barack Obama? Push it? Okay, right? So obviously a big mistake, right? 1776. And then you go to, ich weiß, 1914. 1914, me? First World War. 1939, Second World War. 1945, end of the Second World War. 1955, one of the most significant dates in history. I was born. And then, 120 years later, Yiskadav, Yiskadash, back up to Shemayim, fine. And then time goes on. That's how the Goyim understand it to be. But says Rashi Hirsch Broide, ki lo hazman over al ha'odom. That's nicht gerecht, not right. It's not that time goes over a man, ela ha'odom naseh b'seich hazman. But we travel through the times. The times. Das heißt, the moshel they usually give is like a spiral staircase. Have you ever seen somebody going up a spiral staircase? Let's say your friend's going up the staircase. You know how these things go? Up like that? As you're standing, you're watching the person going up, but again and again he's coming to the same point. You can see him there and he's gone behind, and again and again. That's how time works. It's not a line, it's circular. It comes round and round. Come to Shabbos Kodesh tomorrow night. Then what's released into the world at Shabbos Kodesh is a koyach of Shabbos. It's a koyach of Shabbos, which itself is called Shabbos. A koyach of menucha, of shalva, of serenity, peace, and enjoyment. Now, if you're watching, the New York Jets, I suppose, in those 100 yards, on a Saturday afternoon, you might just miss the kedusha of Shabbos. But most people are margish as a special something. Last week, Taka, it was that special Shabbos that they had. They celebrated Shabbos all over the world, 1 million Yidden, including lots of people who've never kept Shabbos in their life before, came together to keep Shabbos. People invited them. I was not far from here in Connecticut with a very good organization called NCSY, together with a shul. And there was the people there, the same number here, who'd never kept Shabbos in their life before. And it's interesting, I have to tell you, there's an organization called AJOP. Have you heard of AJOP? Association of Jewish Outreach Professionals. And I once gave a lecture there many years ago, and then I gave another lecture, and I was invited to go back the third time. My late wife, Alea Shalom, was not very well. She had Yena Machle, and I wasn't able to go in that particular time. But it's very interesting that that year I wasn't there. The keynote speaker, the scholar in residence, was somebody called Rabbi Professor Dr. David Gottlieb. Don't know if you've come across David Gottlieb. He's an Ilui. He's a Boston Chassid, an unbelievable cop. And David Gottlieb was there with all the organizations involved in Kiruv Rechokim all over the United States of America. There was Or Sameach, and there was Aish HaTorah, and there was whatever organization you can think of, they were all there. And in those days, that's when Kiruv was still huge, there was about, I think, if I remember rightly, 2,000 people. That's huge for this event. And so they all swapped ideas, right? Aish HaTorah is particularly good at shtick. You know, this shtickle, and then they took the kids skydiving and then scuba diving, and they fought with lions, whatever they did, and then, you know, fight, all sorts of tricks. This idea and that idea and skiing, and this shear and use that angle and funny title. What did they discover at the end of 4 days together with all the greatest people in Kiruv Rechokim in the world? What was the most effective tool in Kiruv Rechokim? A Shabbos invitation. For all the tactics and the cleverness and all that, invite somebody to your home on Shabbos. When they see a Shabbos, when a Yid sees a Shabbos, automatically it touches the neshama. There's a shutfus, and that koyach, that kedusha that you can, as a Rabbi Dessler, I tell Rabbi Dessler, beautiful. Rabbi Dessler says the Hebrew word, we know the Lashon HaKodesh word for world is olam, ayin vav lamed mem. It comes from the shorish ayin lamed mem, and that means hide or hidden, right? So if Hashem Yisbarach wants to create a world in which you have Bechira, he would have to hide the reality of his existence away. Maskim? Otherwise you'd have no freedom of choice. But what does it say? Hashem finished the work. And he rested on Yom HaShvit from everything that he'd been doing, all the work he'd been doing. What had he been doing during the 6 days of creation? Created a world in which he was hidden. He stopped hiding in Shabbos. By Yishbois. He stopped doing that when it came to Shabbos. You can see him. You can be margish. You can feel the Kedusha of Shabbos. Every Shabbos, when we turn that cycle in the way you can't normally feel. It's the same when it comes to Pesach. Zman Cherusenu. There is the expression into the world at that time of Cherus. Cherus from physical enslavement, also Cherus from spiritual enslavement. A person can have been a lion in Pesach, she ain't come out. And so it is with all the Zmanim. Every Zman, it's not that time passes over a man. Man passes through the times. Interesting. And this is what Rabbi Yerucham has to say in the subject. Rabbi Yerucham quotes a medrash, and it says, "The kol zman ve'es the kol chayfet zman hoyel adam rishon shikanis." There's a time for everything. There was a time for Adam Rishon to enter Gan Eden, and a time for him to leave Gan Eden. There was a time for Avraham Avinu to do Bris Milah, and there was a time for Klal Yisrael to get the Torah. So he asks, what do you mean it was a time? Surely the fact that Klal Yisrael got the Torah was because they were roy for the Torah. The Avraham Avinu was roy for Bris Milah, that's why he got Bris Milah. And he says, no, a big aside. Everything's Torah B'Zman. Had Adam Rishon done what he did, the mistake that he made, but the time was not there for him to be kicked out of the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, he wouldn't have been kicked out. We think of time as being simply the way we mark when events happened. No. Events happen because of man. There is an expression into the Bria at certain times, not just the annual cycle, but there are expressions into the Bria of koiches, which if you exploit them, if you're ready for them, if you catch the bus, if you catch the train, gewaldig. After all, if time is a circle, if we come to Lamoshel Purim, what's the halacha when it comes to Purim? Mishanim is Adar, Marbin B'Simcha, and what's the halacha going to say? And if you have to have a court case with a non-Jewish person, make it during Adar. Because there's an expression into the world, a koyach of mazel, which is good for Klal Yisrael. Mishaniknas Av, and if you've got a din Torah with a non-Jewish person, try and postpone, because you're likely to lose. Don't go. Now this is Gavaldic news. If you know what's going to happen ahead of time, That's fantastic. Suppose I told you, I happen to know next week's winning lottery numbers. Because we Lamed Vovniks have special koiches. I've heard that they have special koiches, and I happen to have a friend, I know somebody, who's a Lamed Vovnik, and he told me next week's winning lottery numbers. Of course, the first one's 36, etc. Fine, good. So you go, yeah, sure. And the numbers that I give you, 36, 40, 14, whatever it is, guess what? By coincidence, you just happened to look, and you had the numbers. And you didn't win that $60 million. So they bring me here to speak again next week. I guarantee you it's a much bigger crowd next week. And I say, could you give us this week's lottery numbers? Yeah, sure. So everybody else says, yeah. But somebody takes down the numbers, and he's another 60 million richer. That would probably be Big Clawley. You know, interessant. All the people that won the lottery, they're all destroyed them. Totally destroyed them. Stuff. But the third time, then Taka, if you know that somehow or other I have the koiches to tell you that if you do this, something Gavaldic is going to happen, you'd be an idiot not to use that information. Maskim? For care, if you knew there was a bunch of anti-Semite Arabs standing outside, waiting to chat Jews, and I said this to you, don't go outside, we call the cops, then you'd be an idiot to go outside. If you know something good is going to happen ahead of time, then you use that information. If you know that something bad's going to happen, use that information as well. And both can be wonderfully beneficial to you. But you've got to use the information. Everything is totally in time. The time releases into the world certain koiches. And he says here, a pella de gazach, with regards to Bilam. When Balak gets Bilam to come and give a klola to Klal Yisrael, then what was the koich of Bilam? The whole koich of Bilam, and what does it say? Ma ezam v'lo ezam Hashem. How can I get angry with them? How can I get them cursed? And Hashem, this is not the time for Hashem to be angry with them. He says, Apella de Kazakh, there's a time for Klal Yisrael, for Hashem to be angry with Klal Yisrael. There's a time for Hashem to be angry with Klal Yisrael. And the whole koyach of Bilam is to know the time, to work out the time, the best time to get them. Everything is Tole B'zman. So you know what? He says, if Adam Arishan had done what he did, but it wasn't the time for him to be kicked out of Gan Eden, he wouldn't have been kicked out of Gan Eden. When the time is available to us, all we have to do is to make sure we're prepared to get on board. When that truck comes, or that bus comes, it only stops at the bus stop for a few moments. If you're ready to get there, you're on. Klal Yisrael got themselves ready for Kabbalas Torah. And then it was the right Zman. But if they got themselves, he says, ready, and it wasn't the time, they've not got the Torah. You've got to match the time to the people and the hachana you put into it. And sort of, let's move to Reb Shlomo Wolbe. Reb Shlomo Wolbe and Ali Shur says something which is tremendously interesting. He says, I think this will ring a bell with all of us, Ha'adam einu yotzin b'odet. We're not created in a vacuum, you and I. The time that we are here, the time that we are in this world, the time that Hashem chose to put us here was specially designed for everything that you are. I have a son who's a big Talmud Chochem, called Eliyahu Eliezer, and he said to me, Dad, you're so lucky you brought us up at the time when we were young. It's so much easier than bringing children up today. And I must admit, I thought bringing my kids up, in those days was difficult enough. But today, with all the Nesionists are out there, you could easily imagine a Yid turning around and saying, yeah, Taka. If only it was 100 years, I don't know how many people are struggling with the wonderful phenomenon of teenage children at the moment. So, Tsar Gidelbon. What does Tsar Gidelboni mean? You ever considered this? A little child comes into your life. I remember when my first son was born. I mean, my late wife, Alea Shalom, and I were gloriously, happily married. But I must tell you, when that little baby boy came into our lives, I felt as though a light had been turned on. And you see them, and they're gorgeous, and you have such fun, and then they grow up a little bit, and then they eat their first piece of solid food, which is usually a banana, most of which they smear into their hair. Right? Doesn't matter, the parents are dancing around the room, Gavaldic, right? And then the next day they start to say, Mommy and Daddy and Bobby and Zadie, wow! And then you double. What do you mean, Sar Gittelbonim? It's gewaldig. Then they start to walk. You can take them places. They're great. Take them places. Noch them, you choose the best school for them. They're experiencing life. You get to be the guide. Ain't Sar Gittelbonim. Then they get to be teenagers. Oh, Sar Gittelbonim. It's interesting. How does it all happen? What did that come from? I've seen this so many times. In non-religious bar mitzvahs, sometimes, many times, I've gone to speak at non-religious bar mitzvahs. The boy stands up, not a drosha like us, when a ketzais and a taisis and a rat and all this stuff, and Yiddish noch, gewaldig. No, and the non-fraternity stands up to give his speech. And everybody's all smiling. And somebody's written a speech for him, it's got all sorts of jokes in it. That's the big shtick, it's got to be funny. Anyway, normally he stands up, and everybody waits, total silence. He looks at his notes, and then he begins. Today I am a man. And everybody plats this. His tiny little falsetto voice, and today I am a man. But I've seen this with my own eyes very many times. That, interessant, what happens is that I made 5 bar mitzvahs. We have 4 sons, and we fostered a little boy for a year, so I made 5 bar mitzvahs. The funny thing is, obviously, 13 is hardly a man, but within 6 months, and certainly a year, that same little boy is saying, Dad, can I borrow your beard trimmer, Dad? I think, what happened? Well, where did he go? Right? And just a few moments before he was leading his pasha, the ganze Mishpacha zusammen, and they're kvelling like crazy. Everyone's getting tremendous nachas from this child, and he's so proud to belong to this family, and the family's so proud that he's reached this madriga in his life, and everything is gewaldig. 6 months later, he looks upon you as an exhibit in a museum from the prehistoric era. You are a fossil, and you look upon him as a fully fledged, paid-up member of Al-Qaeda. And you think, what happened? Was hat passiert? Where did he go? The simplest request is met with the rolling of eyeballs. Honey, could you bring your laundry down? A lot of shoulder work goes in there. Das ist Sar Gittelbonim. So my son said, you think it was difficult in your time? And incidentally, taka interessant, don't forget what happens. I was just thinking about this week. When Yaakov Avinu gives a big stark Musa to Shimon and Levi. How old was Shimon and Levi when they did they gave the appropriate response to the people in Shechem? How old were Shimon and Levi? Any idea?
13.
13, yeah. 13 and 13, I think, actually. Both 13. How old are you?
13.
Right, 13. And Yaakov Avinu says, gives them what for? What do they say? Our sister should be like a zoina. That's interesting. Then what does Yaakov Avinu do? You understand? And Rashi says he waits till later, much later, much later, when they'll listen to him. There's a gadlus there. Interesting, I'm going off slightly a tangent, but if you're in that pasha, very often the worst possible person to deal with your teenage children is you. And when they're in full-fledged rebellion, it's interesting. Something we need Mashiach for. The bridging the generation gap has always been the case, always will be the case until Eliyahu becomes and he stops the whole thing. But Taka is interesting. So this is how Posher. Sometimes you need somebody else. Maybe it can be a Bobby or a Zayda, maybe an uncle or an aunt that the child listens to because, it's not their fault. They've got, hormones all over the place, they're growing up and their shoulders just can't stop doing that and the eyeballs rolling, etc. Sometimes you need somebody else who can intervene before they start to listen to you. So he says, interessant, that where we live and the time we live was specific, just the same way as your children, even though they're driving you crazy when they're teenagers, but they were specifically chosen for you and you were specifically chosen for them. You're not created in a vacuum. The time that you live and the place that you're born into is perfectly matched for you as a person. Ben Azai says, Al tehe boz l'kol odom, v'hal maflig l'kol dover. Don't disparage anything, And don't dismiss or speak badly about any person. Because there's no man or woman who doesn't have a time. And there's not a thing that doesn't have a place. And Rosh Hashanah says a brilliant thing. Everything has a place. Everything has a place. I know somebody in Manchester, his father-in-law was a very fine Yid, Satmar Chassid. He was in Auschwitz. And they took him out. There was a salt mine outside Auschwitz. And they took him out in a truck one day, the prisoners, and there's a SS guy standing in the back of the truck with a machine gun. And they had to work in the salt mine. And what happened was the front tire burst, and the truck went off the road and went down a big ravine. It was going to crash at the bottom. And the truck crashed and they were all killed except his shver. Because they were careering down the hillside, there was a tree with a low-hanging branch, and he saw it, and he jumped up, hung on to it, he's dangling there, and the truck went down, and everybody was killed. But he was saved, because everything's got a place. But only a person's got a time. But only a person has a time. Squirrels have never changed their behavior since Bria Sa'olam. They bury nuts, they jump up trees. Every squirrel does the exact same as every other squirrel. They've never said, I'm sick to death of nuts, I want chocolate. It just never occurred, right? But as in our time, I suppose you could have nuts in chocolate, but never mind. But our time is miyuchad, specific to us. And place as well. Listen to this. The Pasuk, we all know the Pasuk, Maloi kol ha'aretz kavoidei. Listen to what Rav Shlomo Wolbe says. He says, if that's true, in bezeh kol hevdel ben Yerushalayim, the New York. If the kavod of Hashem fills the entire world, and He created the entire world, and this is Rav Shlomo Wolbe, again I'll read to you the Lashon HaKodesh, ve'im zeh kol hevdel ben Yerushalayim, the New York. There's no difference between Yerushalayim and New York. Now I assume, and maybe this is brazen and a chutzpah to say this, that Rav Shlomo Wolbe never visited Brooklyn. If he had, he would certainly not say such a thing. Okay. However, leaving that aside, what does that mean? It says, Kol mokum ba'olam molek avoda. If the Pasuk says, if David HaMelech says that the ganze Welt is full of the kavod of Hashem Yisborach, everywhere. Because Zayis Yeshev Don, of course, versteht sich that it is a difference. And we know the Gemara says there's 10 levels of Kedusha, which is specific and unique to Eretz Yisrael. And you know what? There are places which, the most beautiful places in the world, Switzerland and Scotland and all these fabulous places, just mentioned Scotland by chance, which don't compare to Eretz Yisrael. So what does it mean? What's the difference? It's just that we don't feel it. There are some places you don't feel the Kedusha. But in Eretz Yisrael, just like he stops in Shabbos hiding himself, there's a place where he stops hiding himself. You feel it. We are margish at more when it comes to Eretz Yisrael. So you can stop being affected by time, and you can stop being affected by place. And the opportunity to stop doing so comes at a specific time in your life. And you can decide whether to leave or to stay. Whether to be affected by it or not to be affected by it. The choice ultimately is yours. There are so many stories during Nemach, the Churban in Europe. There was a yeshiva in London called Schneider's Yeshiva. Rav Moshe Schneider was the Talmud of the Chofetz Chaim, and he set up a yeshiva in Frankfurt. And eventually they had to flee, and they ended up in London. Many of the greatest Gedolim of England, the Getzed Rov, etc., Dein Kreuz, various others, were all Talmidim of Moshe Schneider's Yeshiva. Moshe Sternbuch, versteht sich, yes, based in Erich Reis, based in Talmud of Schneider's. And interesting, the yeshiva was in an apartment building. It's a famous story. And the SS, it was Kristallnacht, and the SS broke in. They were looking for Jews to beat up. And the Bochrim were looking out the windows, and they saw the SS getting into the building, and they made a bolt towards the door. And Rav Moshe Schneider stood there and said, Zitzach! Zog Tilim! And they zogged Tilim. I kind of guessed they zogged Tilim with a bit of passion. And the SS came up the stairs. Now, if you've got a couple of, 100 or so Bochrim screaming their heads off zogging Tilim, that might, put a big sign, Jews here to beat up. Pelle Gezach. Somehow or other they missed the noise and they missed the building. Because Zman only works if you apply the rules of Zman. Place, Mokum, only works if you apply the rules of place. But here, Zog and Tilim, an incredibly high level, the story of the Belzerov. You probably know that story yourself. The Belzerov, when the Nazis put a price in his head, they were after him. And many times they stopped him. And he, with the Shabbos, they had just davened and Zog Tilim, and some or other just went straight through. Same story with the Briskerov and his son. You can step out of this world so that Zman doesn't affect you. Walk into, you're not there anymore. When Noach went into the Teva, he wasn't in this world anymore. Yaakov Avinu left this world for 3 years when the Olam Haba came back down. So place, you can defeat place. But the Aron HaKodesh defeated place. Mokum didn't apply to it. When a Jew attaches himself to the Kedusha of Limud Torah, to the Kedusha of the Torah of davening, you defeat time. One last idea, and that's why I told you those two stories at the beginning. I was here last week in Monsey, versteht sich, if you come to a place, Moli Kedusha, like Monsey, with so much in Yiddishkeit to see, naturally the first stop is Evergreen. That's gewaldig, unbelievable. Yeah, take that, pomegranate. Evergreen. Wow. So I was in Evergreen, and I was walking down there, and I walked past a Yid, and you know what it's like when somebody recognizes you and you don't recognize. It's terrible. This happens to me all the time. Because I speak all over the world. I remember I was once in Manchester and a car pulled up beside me and a guy leapt out and he said, "Rabbi Rubinstein," he said. I knew the answer. "Yes," I said. "Do you remember me?" he said. 3 years ago, in Leeds, Street Lane Gardens Synagogue, you spoke to 600 people. I was there. So, and he said to me, "You were brilliant. You were brilliant. I still remember the joke you told." I said to him, "And what joke did I tell?" And he told me the joke. I'd forgotten. It was actually quite funny. And then I said to him, "And what else did I say?" It's like they slept an hour and a half to get to Leeds to tell a joke. No. But because I speak all over the world, lots of people. And there was this Yid walking down, and he sort of walks past me, and he stops, and he turns around, and he goes, "Rabbi Rubinstein." And I said, "Yes." He said, "How are you?" "Fine." I said, "Please forgive me. Do I know you?" "You've met me once." "Oh," which makes you feel bad. A very fine Choshev Yid in Yerke Hill called Ami Cohen. You come across Ami Cohen? I get the feeling everybody knows Ami Cohen. He's one of these Varma, wonderful. Reb David Cohen of Brooklyn, his son. Fine fellow. And so we're starting, and he, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm going to Chasna," and I said, "I'm just trying to buy some Mentos." I would Megala my taiva, right? Mentos strawberries, a particular favorite of mine. So of course, being Ami Cohen, he helps me to locate the Mentos, right? So I'm walking him down. No, he's the rabbi needs. Where can he find Mentos? Anyway, eventually we find the Mentos aisle. So we're standing there, and he said, "I've got to tell you a gewaldige Vater." Tells me a gewaldige Vater. I said, "No, oi bazoi, I'll tell you one." So I start to tell him, and a Chassidish Yid comes up, long pairs, and he says, "Oh, two rabbis. Do you mind if I join in?" Gewaldig! Taka Evergreen. Taka Evergreen, young and fresh and passionate. He said, "I want to tell you a beautiful Orach Chaim HaKodesh." And he did. So I'll give you a bit of Monsey Torah, here in Monsey, if it's not a chutzpah. The Orach Chaim HaKodesh, and if you're talking about stepping out of Zman, listen to this. The Orach Chaim HaKodesh, he says, in the Seder of Veschanan, Moshe said, "Veschanan al Hashem bo eis hahi leimor." The Taka Bilam knew there were times which is good to get Klal Yisrael in trouble. Moshe Rabbeinu, Lokam Yisrael Moshe, there was somebody, and the Island was as great as Moshe, and that was Bilam. But he turned to the right. He's looking for times that are bad. Moshe Rabbeinu is looking for times that are good. Listen to what the Orach Chaim says. And this, if you want to step out of time, not be affected by Olam Hazeh or by place, listen to this. Oid Naskav and the Dayak, it says, I want to explain to you, Arba Tanoim Hatzrichim LeKabbalas Tefillah. If you want taka To be matzliach, when you daven to Hashem Yisborach, there are 4 conditions that have to be met. And listen to this. Echad, she'espalol ka'oni hadoifik al ha'pesach. You should be like an oni that comes to the door, clapping in the door, bang, bang, bang. And you know you don't have a penny, and the fellow inside's got money. That has to be your mindset, has to be your kavona when you're knocking on the door of Shemaim. I've got nothing. Rabban Shem, you've got, du hast alles. Ich hab gar nicht. That's point number 1. Kederach Omer, it says, it brings a posset for this. Base, she'yevakish mi mekor harachmi. And the second thing is, you've got to realize that the door that you've knocked on, the person who's opening the door is the makar harachamim. Nobody will ever be as generous to you as this person who's going to open the door to you. Hashem Yisborach. So first of all, you've got to realize you have nothing, he's got everything, and he's so generous and so philanthropic. Make those 2 things clear in your mind. Gimel. Zman ha-tefillah. Kederach omro va'ani tefilasi lecho Hashem etz rotzai. There's a time to daven. It's poshut. It's called Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. And to come together for Shtetzach, we all know. And Reb Shlomo Wolbe says, how much siyata d'shmaya the people miss out on, which was available to us if only we davened in the minyan. If only we davened together in the minyan. And Dalet, shetehei tfilasam, this is this got me very excited. I didn't know this. Shehei tfilasam meforeshes, v'loi te'esavelas perish bil te'hogan. Your prayer has to be specific and exact. What you're asking for, don't leave any wiggle room in Shemaim. That could be misunderstood, or they can dray arouse and give you, just a little bit. Be specific and ask for what you want. Cathartic. Time. We're not quite able to step into a teva and go away for a year and have time just disappear from us, so we're not affected by time. And the place, taka affects us. Afal Pekin, when it comes to davening, there's a time to use time effectively. If you know something good's going to happen, you're an idiot not to exploit it. If you know Purim's coming, the Zman of Mazel, that's when you go to the court with a non-Jewish person. And avoid it during Av. But you know what? This is, as we say in Moedim, and we say it during our tefillahs, because the time of tefillah is a time of special brocha, at Zman, in which everything that you want can be given, as long as you meet those 3 conditions. Wish you all a very good Shabbos.